Welcome to Christ the Lord Clearwater's weekly message. I'm Pastor John Backus here in our studio in Clearwater, Florida, where we share the good news of Jesus on the Gulf Coast. You're joining us for the start of a new message series called Focused. Let's jump right in. So there I was at the eye doctor. I had just had my eyes tested for glaucoma, some thick gel kind of put in your eyes to make the eye dilate. And then right after I got that test done, they sent me over to pick up some new frames. Now when you get your eyes dilated for a glaucoma test, things get blurry, and after a little while you can see enough down the road to drive home, but you're not going to read a thing with that gel in your eye. And yet, the staff at that eye doctor's office had me sit in front of this little mirror, and they handed me some frames, and I put these frames on, and I started laughing because they were expecting me to be able to choose a nice fashion, a good fit that I liked, when my whole head was blurry looking at myself in the mirror. It was absurd. I couldn't focus. Our new series starting now is called Focused. Focus matters. If we can't see information right, can't orient ourselves right, can't make the right call, life gets messy. Like, what if you're blurry about the level of the parking garage your car is on? So you go one level too high and you walk the whole place, you can't find your vehicle. What if you're one order of magnitude off on the price of some stock you invest in? You can get exponentially wrong. Earlier today I was making some scalloped potatoes with a roux sauce, a white sauce, and without thinking, I thought, okay, 1 tablespoon of butter to 1 cup of flour, and that's the base for a white sauce. As I was gathering the flour, I started looking at my roaster pan of potatoes. 6 tablespoons of butter, to 6 cups of flour. 6 cups of flour, that would be enough to bake, loaves and loaves of bread. I got the measurements wrong. I was blurry in how these things are supposed to work. So focus, when our focus is lost, we become distractible. We think here and then here and here. Our attention has a deficit, and somebody has to tell you, stay on target, stay with me here. Or maybe you're locked onto an idea, but you're in the wrong direction, and you're driving and your eyes are locked into an attractive someone on the sidewalk, and the person next to you in the car says, hey, eyes on the road. You can be locked on, you can be looking in the right direction, but if things are blurry, it doesn't matter what you're facing or if your eyes are locked on, they're not clear. When we talk about focused in this series, we're going to be addressing things that you may have looked at or thought about and evaluated as worth your time or not throughout the years. We're going to talk about love, about church, about prayer, about wealth, about the time of your lifespan. And you may think, I kind of know what this is, or think about it later. But these things can get really blurry, and what we think we're looking at might not actually be the design that God has for us. So our goal is to look at these topics related to our faith life from God's perspective and ask, is there some clarifying here I need to do to see more accurately what's in front of me? And the big idea today is none other than love. So focused love. How does focused love properly work, and what does it look like? Now, one of the teachings of Jesus on the concept of love is found in Luke chapter 10. Jesus is having a conversation that ends up with him telling this profoundly, widely known and appreciated teaching story called the parable of the Good Samaritan. Now, if you're in a hurry today, you're lucky because this is one of the most famous stories of Jesus ever. You probably don't even have to read the Bible or have a Christian backstory to know, like a Good Samaritan, what it's all about. So this might be the most shortest message or the most famousest story of Jesus, but let's just summarize it, okay? The big ideas in the Good Samaritan, Luke 10. Jesus says there's this guy who gets mugged. Some people don't help him. One guy does help him, and that guy is the Good Samaritan. So, be helpful. If it was just that simple, just be helpful, why didn't Jesus just say, be helpful? Why is this story appreciated, and why do we look into it and say there's something special and timeless here that's more than just be helpful? It has to do with a lack of focus, that there might be something blurry in our understanding of love that we have focused and come into clarity through this parable. So how does this parable help us? What's the moral of the story of the Good Samaritan? What's the moral? What's the point of it? What's the focus of it? The focus of it is help people? It's not quite right. It's not right. It's not complete. You see, to understand why this story is so profound, we have to understand what it was meant for. It's the answer to a question, the solution to a problem. So if the parable is the answer, what's the problem? And to find the problem that led Jesus to craft this narrative, we got to understand context. So we have to go back outside of this little story, this fable, and we have to go to the real history of a conversation between two men. One of them was Jesus, and across from him was an expert in the law who was facing off, in a sense, against Jesus, who was viewed as a really smart rabbi, Jewish teacher, but who had no training, so he was kind of self-taught. People didn't understand he had the wisdom of God in him. They thought he was just kind of a self-made, grow-your-own rabbi kind of guy. And this expert of the law, with his teaching and his pedigree and education, came to Jesus not to do some mano-a-mano arm wrestling, but to go down in a battle of the wills, to lock horns, to do a mental showdown on some discussion and dialogue about virtue. So the expert in the law comes to Jesus with a question. Expert in the law, today you might think he's just a lawyer, or you might think he's an expert in the laws of the Bible, like morality. But he's neither really a lawyer nor a pastor, but he kind of is both a lawyer and both a pastor, because he lived in the realm both of theology and civic law. So you might say he was some sort of a professor of ethics, and he wants to have an ethics debate. So before we ever even get to this story of the Good Samaritan that Jesus made up, this question was on the table, and the question was this. The expert in the law, the professor of ethics, says, hypothetically, Jesus, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And for now, we'll just say, to gain true moral approval of everything you do. Now, before answering, Jesus took a lay of the land and asked a clarifying question to try to evaluate where this expert in the law was coming from. So Jesus asked him, well, you're an expert in the law. What have you discovered in your law? How do you read it? And the man replied, it's love. Well, love is the secret ingredient to inheriting eternal life, to being deemed worthy of approval of God, the universe, or the final evaluation of my merit. Love. Now, do you think that's a good answer? Jesus asked him, what does your law background tell you about how to gain eternal life. And the guy answered, my law background tells me about love. Have you ever read law? You ever read a law code? Here's the United States statutes at large, volume 80 through 120, 115 books. Let's go a little simpler. Let's just stay in Florida. Here's tort law, where you get in trouble for making an injury or causing loss to another person. It's personal injury. You can get all this on a huge downloadable file of tort law legislation for only $16,063. It's not a little PDF file. This is heavy-hitting stuff. And if you were to look either read United States statutes at large or read Florida tort law, and you say, oh, this is such Valentine's Day material. Hallmark holiday, there's nothing like law codes. Honey, February 14th, I'm going to show you some love on my anniversary by giving you laws. How do you like Deuteronomy? That would have been the law code of this expert's day, like the Old Testament writings, primarily the foundational documents of the nation of Israel, how they would operate and why, written by Moses. So you go in Deuteronomy, and this guy looks in Deuteronomy and says, what it's about, what it's teaching me is love. Now, is that the focus, would you say, of Deuteronomy? What's the moral of the story? Not of the Good Samaritan, but of Deuteronomy. What's the moral of Deuteronomy? What's the focus or the point of Deuteronomy? What's all this Old Testament writing stuff from ages ago all about? Wouldn't most people say it's something like it's about rules, it's about penalties, it's about paying and sacrificing and executing and attacking? Wouldn't you say it's about judgment? Wouldn't you say it's about anger when people disobey and their bones are scattered in the desert? I mean, that's like the classic view of Deuteronomy. What's Leviticus? What's the point of Leviticus? Honey, I love you so much, and I'm going to show you by presenting you with Leviticus. What's the moral of Leviticus? Isn't it rules and judgment and anger and do this? But Jesus had a clearer focus. This expert in the law said, it's all about love. And Jesus said, you're right. You are right. Deuteronomy is about love. These standards of behavior is about love. It's about love for God, His divine principles and design, and love for your neighbor. Get love and you get life. And love not just yourself, not narcissism, mind you, but love your neighbor. Love is at the heart of it. So if you think Deuteronomy and Leviticus are about anger, judgment, rules, condemnation, death, or bones scattered in the desert, you're looking at something in a blurry way. Now, this guy who had tried to test Jesus, give Jesus a little law bar exam, got a counter question, and the expert in the law navigated it clearly. So he said, just be honest, we're told that he wanted to still come out on top. So he said, well, if the key to getting life right now and lasting after death is loving God and loving your neighbor, who is my neighbor? Give me something to work on if you can. Who is my neighbor? And he's asking, if I am a living, walking, breathing lawyer of love and law, who should I take on as a client? Who gets to benefit from my understanding of love? Which people group or ethnicity or skin color or age or language speaking? Where's the pre-certified group? Who's pre-qualified for a love loan from me? Because if somebody is not my neighbor, who is my neighbor? Well, if that person is and that person's not, then kind of free of obligation on my end, right? And here comes Jesus' answer in the parable of the Good Samaritan. The parable of the Good Samaritan wasn't just a person in need and a helper passing by. It was a deeper context that we probably don't appreciate in our era now, but What this circumstance called for, the conflict between Jew and Gentile, was not love, it was justice. Like, this relationship, people typically believed, called for retribution or payment or vengeance of some kind. From the Jewish perspective, the Samaritans were squatters. They had moved into the Jewish Holy Land while the Jews were in Babylon. And then these non-Jewish hybrids came in, not pure descendants of Abraham on the pure mission, but this intermingling of messed up family backstories were now on our land. And as a result, Jews lived in the north and Jews lived in the south, but in the middle was enemy territory occupied by Samaritans. So good Jews would bypass, and Samaritans would watch them bypass, and then be obscene gestures as the other people go by. You wouldn't stop at a rest area owned by Samaritans if you were a Jew. You wouldn't stop at a gas station owned by Jews if you were Samaritans. They were each upset with each other for corrupting the true church. Everything about Jew and Gentile was about people who didn't like how the other one smelled. It was offensive, and so they kept far apart. So a Jew and a Gentile seeing another in need in the gutter would probably think, well, that's poetic justice. The gutter is where someone like you belongs. In this story, which is about not just love, but who a neighbor is, who deserves love, Jesus sets it up so that there's no incentive of kindness. The way a story like that rationally and logically would have turned out was to be not two, but three people passing by as the enemy dies. Good Samaritan saw a guy he didn't like. And if that guy on the side of the road was healthy, you can be sure he didn't like you, Good Samaritan. If he's a neighbor, if he, that cultural and historical enemy, that heretic is a neighbor, and I be nice to him, it also means I'm walking while he's riding. If he's my neighbor, somebody I don't like, not only do I not like that person, but I'm paying his bills. If he's my neighbor, it means I have to interrupt my schedule, take a long detour, go here, and then make a trip, retrace my steps just to check on the guy, make sure he's okay. And this is why two passed by saying that he is no neighbor to me. But the third in Jesus' story didn't ask, is he a neighbor to me? Because he had a different view of love. And his view of love was not, do you qualify as being worthy of neighborly kindness from me, but rather, am I going to be a neighbor to him? Instead of he's no neighbor to me, the question is, am I going to be a neighbor to him? Not just love itself is at question here today, but the question, to whom am I obligated to show love? And a blurry form of love says, I've got this virtue, this kindness for another person that I extend to another that's dependent on the object of my love. If they're nice, if I like them, if they're civil, then they get love. Then I can act as a neighbor to them. The blurry is focused on the recipient, but the focused is about the sender. The focused isn't on the object, but the focused love is all about the subject. Who am I that is acting? Not, do you deserve to receive my kindness? And this is a divine idea called agape love. It's described by Paul in Romans, which says, God demonstrates his love for us in this way. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. While we were still the opposite of what God liked, he rescued us. While we were what God did not want, he rescued us. While we were under God's disapproval, while we were objects of wrath, while we were moral trash, while we were corrupted, our instincts were wrong, that's when God chose to love us. It was a love based on his commitment to be a loving God, not on our quality to qualify for his love. And this is a new type of love altogether, not a love you fall into. If you've been married, we have some people married here in our congregation, several couples for over 50 years. And you get to a point where you're like, love isn't just like falling. I mean, after 50 years, I wonder if you'd like, hope your partner takes a fall down the stairs every once in a while. Like, that's fall. But love is not falling in love, not the kind that lasts. That's shallow love. It's love lamented by Taylor Swift. The lyrics, what started in beautiful rooms ends with hookups in parking lots. But true love, like when we experience love that is extended to us that we don't deserve, that's profound. I think to times over the years when people were kinder to me than I deserved, more patient with me than I deserved. They gave me things I didn't deserve and canceled debts I owed. When we realize that love is not pre-certified, pre-qualified, that it's kindness extended to the undeserving, then we go through life not only with a sense of gratitude, but we're kept away from making judgments about the value of other people, and instead we can view all people as a person to whom I can show my loving nature. Now, in our life with God, if God is that way toward us, if he's just committed, if he's committed to care about us regardless of our moral lack of moral virtue, then like, what could stop him? If God is for us, who could be against us? Who, as the hymn says, who can rob me of the heaven that God's Son for me won when his life was given? Everything changes if the love in Christianity is not about competition, it's not about qualifying, it's God being kind to people he could just as easily criticize. And when we encounter that and begin to reflect it to others, changes the world.